Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk Wordy, my hub for all the words that I read, write, or otherwise want to yap about. Today, I have a very special author guest on the pod that I have been geeking out over for quite some time. She's the New York Times bestseller of both fiction and nonfiction titles. She's also a podcast host and creator, a screenwriter, and a prominent YouTuber across several channels and over 170 million views. Literal mind-blowing. Are you kidding me? Her latest book, Save the Date, is out now. Please welcome Allison Raskin.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a delight.
This is such a treat for me. I was telling you earlier, I was like, I watched your content when I was like in my high school years, and genuinely, like, the BuzzFeed era got me through a lot of shit, truthfully. And so when I found out that I was going to be interviewing you, I was like, you're so familiar, but it's been a while. And so as soon as I Googled it, I was like, 16-year-old Sydney is quaking right now. So this is so awesome. Thank you so much for being willing to come on the pod.
Oh, of course. And I'm glad to pop back up. I think a lot of people, it's like, oh, who is that? Did I used to watch her?
Okay, so something I like to do with my guests, usually when we have full-length episodes, we like to debrief what we're reading, watching, listening to. But since we're on a little bit more of a time crunch, I'm curious, do you have any current hyperfixations that have just like taken over your brain lately?
I guess my baby. I'm 11 weeks postpartum, so this is my first trip away from him.
Aww.
And so definitely in new mom mode at the moment. And so that's learning a lot about all sorts of weird stuff and how to keep a human alive.
Yeah. Is this your first one?
Yes.
Oh, how special. Oh, that's awesome. What, oh my gosh. It's like, I've been asking everybody their hyperfixations. It's like, heated rivalry, the traitors, blah, blah. And she's like, my baby. I'm like, that's so pure. I absolutely love that. Okay. So for some of our listeners that might not know, you've had quite a stint in comedy and sketch writing. I actually watched a lot of your content as a teenager, as we know, and then found you later on in adulthood with your novels. What has that shift been like for you personally, going from the more digital side to now incorporating print media?
So I actually went to school in college for screenwriting and have a BFA in that. And so I was always really drawn to like more traditional media. Like I thought I would be a TV writer back when I thought that was like an attainable thing. And so actually I have found that my internet content and presence has been what's allowed me to do longer form writing. And so for me, it's always been like a two-hander. It was, it gets you in the door to have the online following and to have that presence and for people to be able to like watch your stuff quickly, and then actually having like the writing background to be able to be like, and here's my script, and here's a novel idea, and here's the thing that I really want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our listeners here on Talk Wordy are actually wanting to kind of diversify their like efforts as creators. For you personally, how have you navigated building so many different platforms that enhance your overall career?
It's been out of necessity. You know, like it's like, I mean, even just this, right? You watched me 10 years ago and then you stopped. Like that's sort of like, it's really hard to stay relevant and to maintain an audience. And so for me, as my career has transitioned, it's always like, okay, how do I follow what's working? How do I try this new arena? How do I expand upon what I'm already doing in something that's sort of adjacent, but a little bit different?
Yeah.
And I think just being really flexible with my identity has helped a lot because, you know, I haven't worked in TV or film in years, but I'm still a writer. And so I think shifting my sense of self from like a screenwriter, actress, comedian to like a storyteller was really helpful because now I can tell a story in so many different mediums.
Yeah, I love that. Speaking of which, tell us a little bit about your newest book, Save the Date.
So this was based off of a joke my family made. Not really even a joke, but I got engaged for the first time in May of 2020, and then 6 months later, he abruptly left me with very little explanation. And it was the middle of the pandemic. It was a nightmare. I flew home to New York from LA. And my parents were sort of like, well, why don't you just find someone else to marry you in time for your wedding? And I was like, that's absolutely bonkers, you
Yeah.
guys. Like, that's not a real thing that I'm going to do, but I will write a fictionalized book about that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So say the date is based off of that premise where a couples therapist gets abruptly left and she has to try to find a new groom in 6 months to sort of like prove to herself that she doesn't need to give up on love, and also kind of like to maintain her professional credibility as this like couples therapist who also has an online presence.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself somebody that's a little bit more jaded when it comes to romance, or are you more of a hopeless romantic?
It's an interesting question because my whole life is about romantic relationships. In addition to writing rom-coms, I'm also a relationship coach.
Yeah.
And I've written 2 nonfiction books about the intersection of mental health and romantic relationships. So I think about this stuff all of the time. But I'm not romantic in the traditional sense. Like, my husband makes fun of me. I like refuse to like really do anything like quote unquote romantic. Like, I never like, we don't celebrate Valentine's Day. I won't stare into his eyes. I'm like, I don't like care about like candlelight. But I think for me, I'm really drawn to partnership. And I love the idea of having a person who has your back and who gets to be a witness to your life and a support system. And so I'm always working with people for how to like find that, if that's something that they want for themselves, because I think it's like one of the best parts of life if you're a person who gravitates towards that lifestyle. But I'm not romantic in the more what you would think sense.
But I like what you were saying earlier. You're kind of at this like unique intersection of mental health and internet culture and contemporary fiction and nonfiction. How have you learned to balance humor with these heavier topics in a way that works so well for you?
I don't know how not to.
Yeah.
I think humor has always been like a major coping mechanism for me. I've struggled with my mental health since I was 4 years old when I came down with OCD pretty badly. And so it was always something I fell back on, and that helped me get through things. And I have a follow-up book coming out in December called Compulsively Yours, which is about OCD. And it's also a lot about grief because right before I dove into writing it, my mother unfortunately passed away in a very unexpected, horrible way, and I incorporated that loss into the book. And so as I was writing the book, I kept saying to my husband, I was like, well, this one's not a rom-com. This one is just a straight romance drama. You know, I know I pitched it as a rom-com, but it's not funny. It's, it's about grief.
Yeah.
And then my husband read it, and he was like, Allison, there's a joke every 2 sentences. So I think it is just so naturally a way that I navigate the world that it's almost second nature in this strange way where I don't know how to not incorporate that into my writing.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like in many of your stories, there's often a larger focus on female friendships, and it's not always just about the romance, which I love. Would you say that friendship stories are kind of undervalued in publishing, and what would you want like about the stories to be advocated more for?
I think that friendship is a vital, and I think that one of the potential downfalls of the romance genre is this idea that one person will be your everything, and that if you just find your partner, then everything will work out, when it's really important to have a bigger support system than just one person.
Yeah.
Like, your partner can be so much to you, but they can't be everything.
Yeah.
And we really need to have like those other people to go to, and our friends and our family and friends who become family and all of that. So it's also just like a something I think I just like kind of naturally tend to incorporate.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think was the biggest difference for you in approaching your nonfiction books versus starting fiction writing?
I sort of knew how to write nonfiction better. It's so funny. I'm such a huge reader. Like, I read every single day. When I was a kid, I would like read in the shower. Like, I'm just like a voracious reader. But for whatever reason, starting to write fiction, it was like how does that work? How does tense work? Like, what's dialogue? Like, I had this background in training in screenwriting, but I didn't necessarily have that in prose. And I think with the nonfiction writing, because I had been writing essays for a long time, first on Patreon, and now I have a Substack called Emotional Support Lady, I was like more comfortable writing nonfiction prose, and then switching to fiction for this bad boy. It was like it was a bit of a journey, and almost just like the bigger stuff, like characters, dialogue, plot came easier, but then like the smaller stuff my editor had to be and we don't need another she said, or like just like the nuances of making it really readable. I think was a journey, and then writing the second book, like you can already tell that things are coming a little bit more easier.
Yeah, it's just all about trial and error.
Yes.
So you're just kind of getting used to it a little bit more. So with you being a voracious reader, I'm curious, like, what kind of stories do you want to see more of in publishing, whether that's like the style of stories, or even like what kind of representation you want more of in fiction books?
Oh, I feel like we have so much good stuff,
Yeah.
Like I think that it's really lovely that there's so much for everyone. I'm someone that loves like a really good thriller, and so I'm always looking for a thriller that's also funny. Like I loved that book, Listen for the Lie.
Ooh.
Which was, I believe that's the title, I might be butchering it, which was like about like a podcast host who was like investigating this own disappearance she'd been involved in, but it was just so like delightful and funny and wry and all those things. And so I'm always kind of like looking for books like Listen to the Lie.
And then if you could wipe your memory and reread your favorite book for the first time, what book are you picking up?
Oh, no.
I know.
Well, okay. Here's the thing. I'm going to not answer your question.
You're like, actually, no.
Because I'm not going to pick one book. I'm going to pick a series that I'm a fanatic about, which is Louise Penny's Inspector Gamache series.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Wow.
Oh.
That's pretty wild. It's a huge 20-plus book series.
Oh, my gosh.
From this amazingly prolific Canadian author, Louise Penny, and it's like a running joke, like how obsessed I am with these books. I made a whole YouTube video about Inspector Gamache with my husband, because he's had to like limit the time of year that I'm allowed to read it, because it's all I talk about when I am reading it. And then one of the audience like forwarded it to her mom, who then forwarded it to Louise Penny, and then Louise Penny included it in her newsletter, and I was like losing my mind.
Oh yeah.
I was like, well, this it doesn't get better than this. So I would pick the Inspector Armand Gamache series.
Okay, I'm gonna look into that a lot more, because if you would want to go back and reread 20 books in one single series, I'm like, I have to know more about this immediately.
I read them out of order, and so there might be like one or two I didn't read, but I can't really figure out which ones it was.
Love that. Okay, so at the time that we're recording this, we are at LoveLitCon, but by the time this airs, we obviously won't be. Sad tear. I'm already missing it, even though we're still here. Tell our future listeners where they can find you online, or if you've got any upcoming events.
Oh, yes. I'm all over the internet.
Yes, you can find her pretty easily. But
all my info is at AllisonRaskin.com. If you wanted to work with me as a relationship or mental health coach, there's also my Substack, Emotional Support Lady, where I do a lot of nonfiction writing about mental health. And then you can get Save the Date anywhere books are sold, and pre-order Compulsively Yours the same way.
Yay! I'm so excited for the second book.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely thrilled. But yeah, there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in to Talk Wordy. And my thanks again to Allison Raskin for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This has been so fun. Don't forget to follow the podcast on Instagram at Talk Wordy Pod. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, you guys.